Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy, and welcome back to a brand new movie review. I'm Chris Garner, joined with my co-host today, Tayte Naomie, and we are back with another Academy Awards film review. Today we're giving our review on Moonlight, which is technically the 2016-2017 for us in the UK drama film directed by Barry Jenkins, starring Trevante Rhodes, André Holland, Janelle Monáe, Ashton Sanders, Naomie Harris, and Mahershala Ali. I think I nailed all of those names. I'm very proud of myself. This is one of those movies this Oscar year which, La La Land aside, this is gaining incredible amounts of hype at the Oscars. Huge amount. I believe, I'm going to check now, I think it's been nominated for 8 Oscar nominations, which is incredible.
Yeah.
I think this is probably the film that has the most Oscar nominations behind La La Land. For anyone who doesn't know the plot to this thing, I'm going to go to our trusty IMDb. It says, a timeless story of human self-discovery and connection. Moonlight chronicles the life of a young black man from childhood to adulthood as he struggles to find his place in the world whilst growing up in a rough neighborhood of Miami. Along the way, he has to come to terms with his sexuality as well. I added that part in because I think that's an integral part of the story. I'm really going to pass this over to you now, because we usually start these things off with our thoughts going in or thoughts on the trailers. But for me, this was a completely cold viewing for me. I knew nothing about this. So over to you. What were your initial impressions before going in?
So, first of all, I'd like to say I have no idea how this is going to go due to Austrian internet connection. So I may jump about. I have no idea. I could barely understand you, Chris, just then, but hopefully it comes out good on the video.
Okay.
My thoughts going into this film was that I knew it was going to be one of the possible kind of front runners for Best Picture. And I watched the trailer and I saw the dramatization behind it. It looked like a chronicle. It was amazing. Like, it looked like it was separated stories that were linked together. And I really liked the idea of that, especially seeing as I'm a massive fan of Cloud Atlas, which is loads of different stories put together across different time periods. And I thought it was going to be something similar to that. And when I came into the film, it does something very, very similar with the actual structure, where they chronicle 3 areas of the main character's life. You've got him in childhood, which I believe was called Little.
Yeah.
The second part is called Chiron, where he's in his teenage years. And the third part is called Black, when he is a grown-up. And I'd just like to say from that, like, the first impressions from the film were, wow, what an incredible film. I really enjoyed it. And there was a lot of things that I could talk about in the film which I really enjoyed. Like, I've been listening to the soundtrack non-stop, like, for the last 2 days now. It was really, really well put together. It's dramatic. It's almost imposing on the story. Like, you feel it in some scenes where the music just kind of comes in a little bit, and it just kind of, it reminds you of those different scenes in the movies, especially I cannot remember the name of the track, but there was one scene where they are in the ocean and this music starts playing. It starts building up faster and faster and faster, and it brings you into that scene perfectly. We'll talk about the story a little bit more in a bit, but I do want to say something very quickly about the studio company, A24, the producers of this film, because they have made some incredible films over the last 2 years, 3 years even. And I feel like they're becoming one of the more prominent kind of production companies for very, very high caliber films. They featured on my best of the year list twice in a row now, with Ex Machina last year and Swiss Army Man this year. And they've had brilliant films coming out. I know you liked The Witch, didn't you, earlier on this year?
Yeah, it's probably one of the best modern horrors. It definitely has a very unique style behind it. It's one I need to go back and rewatch, but you can find, we did a review with it. I think it was me and Tom on that one. But yeah, I very much enjoyed that. And Ex Machina, as you said, was definitely one of my favorite movies from that year. That came
another
out.
film that was being kind of hyped towards the like award season was 20th Century Woman, which I believe has been nominated in the Golden Globes. I think it's got Oscar nominations as well in some categories. So really, really good production company for a company that has only been going since 2012, I believe. That's a really seriously good track record for films. And there are more and more films coming out which we can get behind in this kind of category. And I think recently they released a trailer for a film and didn't give it a name or a title, and it's a sci-fi film. It looks absolutely incredible. And I know I was speaking to you guys about, sorry, the Cinema Savvy people about this in our little chat that we have. And I was just intrigued. Like, companies don't usually release a trailer and then don't release the film title with it. I think that's a bold move by them, but it got people talking about it. Everyone was talking about it for at least a few days. So really exciting and up-and-coming company, A24. Want to see what they do next.
Definitely. I mean, I don't think I watched all of that trailer. I know you linked it in the chat. I'll have to go back and rewatch that, but that's really interesting how they're building that hype already without a title. That's really, really awesome. So this review, as always, will be a review in 2 parts. First off will be spoiler free, so you don't have to worry about us giving anything away. We'll warn you when we get to spoilers, although really, me personally, I don't have a whole lot to talk about in spoilers. It's a very self-contained story. No. So as I said, first impressions for me were kind of just watching the movie, because I hadn't seen any trailers. I didn't know what the story was. I was aware that Mahershala Ali was in it after seeing him in Luke Cage, and we'll get onto the acting performances later on, because that's pretty much the strongest category that this is going into with the Oscars. So story structure, as you said, it's a story told in 3 chapters. And I think it's very elegant how it tells a story in that regard. We have chatted very briefly about this film before hitting record, and we do have some differing opinions on the film. For me, I still enjoyed this film. However, I do think it is perhaps a little bit overhyped. Maybe the hype that I was aware of that this movie had influenced my opinion going into this movie, so it wasn't a complete cold viewing. I think it's a very competently made movie. However, I don't know if you compare it to some other things in the Oscars, I don't know if it deserves all the hype it's getting. But in terms of a structure, I thought it was very clever how they did that, how they do show this character's story through 3 very integral stages of his life. My problem with that is that I feel like, I know you were talking about before we hit record that you have to fill in the blanks yourself, and I'm completely fine with that usually. I'm glad that they didn't spoon feed everything to you. For example, not giving anything away, there are some characters in this film that will be in the first half of the film, and then just you won't see those characters again, so you have to come up with your own conclusions as to what happened to them. My problem is more in the actual substance and the meat of the story, because it does skip I don't know how many years it skips in between. It's a good chunk, though. It feels like you're not getting the complete story, and I didn't feel like I had enough substance or connection there for me to get fully emotionally invested in this film. And don't get me wrong, there are some scenes, especially towards the end, which are very emotional, but I feel they were lessened somewhat because it does jump around and skips quite a lot out. It's kind of the Star Wars prequels mechanic, and of course I have to link it to Star Wars, don't I? I'm that kind of person. But how Attack of the Clones picks up, and we've had this 10-year jump from young Anakin to this Anakin, and they say that, oh, we went on all these amazing adventures together, and it's like, great, I really wish we could have seen all those amazing adventures you went on. It's kind of like that with me with this film. I wanted to see what happened in those in-between bits, which I think would have fleshed out the story a little bit more than it inherently is.
You see, I'm going to completely disagree with you here on the grounds that Boyhood is a thing. We don't want another Boyhood.
Yes.
And to be honest, like Boyhood, the thing that Boyhood suffered from was it felt too long. This film did not feel too long. In fact, it could have been maybe 5-10 minutes long in some of the scenes, and it gave you just enough to want more, but not so much that you felt overwhelmed by it. And the way that they structured the story and the way that they propelled the story forward, and yeah, sure, they abandoned a couple of characters, abandoned a couple of plot lines that they were following there, and it makes you wonder what happened to them. But no, it keeps the focus purely on Chiron as the main character, and it allows you to kind of focus in on him and the journey through his life as he is developing as a person. And we're able to see that in a shorter time span than that was done in Boyhood, in a better way than what was done in Boyhood. Because Boyhood, you see every single year, every single major moment. This, we have to see major moments. We just need to see 3 points of his life to get a judgment, okay? We're not there to learn everything about this character. And this isn't really dipping into spoilers here, because I'm not going to use any specifics, but we don't need to learn absolute every single detail of this character. A good storyteller can show you a 5-minute snippet, a 10-minute snippet, or in this case, 3 half-an-hour snippets to know what their character is like at 3 different stages of their life, and how that is influenced by the people around them, and how they interact with the world. And from that alone, I feel like this movie is better than La La Land, but I prefer La La Land. Now, I said that to you guys in the chat, and I truly mean it. This is a better film than La La Land. It truly is. Any other year that it could have been nominated for Best Picture, I think it would have had a good shot of winning. I really do. And I feel like, as far as the cinematography is concerned, it's really, really nice. It's probably on par with La La Land as far as my cinematography is favored. The production in La La Land is obviously a lot better. But I feel like the acting from all the characters in this film is a lot better than La La Land. And
well, it's a very different film, isn't it? It's difficult to compare the two.
It's a very different film, obviously. It's very difficult to compare the film, and it's difficult for the Academy to compare the film. But we are fully aware that Moonlight won the Best Drama at the Golden Globes. And as far as categories are concerned, there was a lot of hype behind La La Land. And sure, I think La La Land is a perfect movie. However, this is just, some elements are better, some elements are worse. But overall, I feel like this film is better. I still, any day of the week, if you tell me what would you want to watch, La La Land or Moonlight, I would choose La La Land every single day. I think it's a better movie though, Moonlight. I really do.
Well, the subject matter inherently is a lot more complex, and you can definitely blend that more towards just current state of affairs and everything like that, because I'm sure the message of this film can resonate with a lot of people that maybe grew up in an environment where it's not okay to be that way. I mean, the main character in this, Chiron, is dealing with is he homosexual or not, and in the kind of environment he is, that is like, you will like be shot if like you say that to anyone, especially in the kind of neighborhood he grows up in.
Shanked or knifed or gunned down, or you'll be persecuted in any way, shape, or form. And like, it's another reason, like, this movie is important to film history. La La Land less so. And because of that, I feel like it may resonate with some larger crowds of Oscar voters. But then again, you can't bet against La La Land when it comes to Best Picture. You really can't.
No, I mean, it's very clear. You can watch our Oscar predictions video, but we're pretty much in agreement that La La Land's just going to sweep the board this year. And it is unfortunate in some regards for other films that I really liked, for example, like Hell or High Water or Hacksaw Ridge. Even in this regard, for you more so than me, I think, but because La La Land is such a juggernaut this year, nothing's going to get a look in. But I mean, this film was based on a play called In Moonlight, Black Boys Look Blue by Terrell Alvin McCraney, and I mean, I've never read that play. Apparently it was written and then shelved for 10 years and then used as kind of a blueprint or jumping off point to make this movie. So, and actually the title of that is very cleverly interwoven into this film from a monologue that Mahershala Ali gives in one of probably his best scenes in the film. But I will agree with that. It's very difficult to compare them because La La Land is so much of a throwback to old classic Hollywood and those kind of musicals. This is just like a drama about, you know, some really hard-hitting subject matter that perhaps isn't brought to light as much as it should be. But I think we should move on to the acting performances here. And there's one acting performance I want to bring up in particular, which I don't know if I can, because it might be a spoiler if I say how long they're in the movie for.
No, I feel like it wouldn't be a spoiler. Now that you've said that, you're immediately spoiling it.
I haven't said who it is. I haven't said which actor it is.
Okay. Shall we start off with the three actors? I don't have my IMDb up because of dodgy internet connection in Austria, but the three actors who played the character of Chiron.
Okay, if you want to go with Little first, Alex Hibbert played Little.
Little. Okay, a man of few words, but brilliantly acted. Like, we see child actors, and some you like, for example, Jacob Tremblay in Room was okay. He was okay, and that's okay. But then you look at the child actor in Boyhood, and you hated him. A lot of hating on Boyhood today. I'm really sorry, but like, it's hit and miss, and this was a complete hit. He played that character perfectly. He really did. Like, just kind of the struggles that they would have to go through and kind of the embodiment of that, to be able to bring that kind of performance out of a person. And then when they did speak, you listened so closely and you kind of, like, every single word that he would say would just echo across the screen. Like that's very difficult to do as like a young actor, and I feel like they've done a very good job there with the casting.
Yeah, and as you said, like he doesn't speak all that much, but even when he isn't, the performance is still great because obviously he comes from he's very neglected by his mother who's dealing with personal matters.
Yeah.
And he's very vulnerable, and you pick up that immediately just with him sitting there. If he's at a table, he's looking down, he's very timid, just in the way he carries himself. So that was great acting there. And as you said, when he does talk, it still reinforces that character. And even with teen Chiron as well, Ashton Sanders, the way that I don't know if all the actors like cross paths with each other or picked up on each other's performances or anything like that, or if they all made it their own, but it does genuinely feel like a continuation of Alex Hibbert's portrayal of that character. Each one does feel like the logical next step of this character that we're seeing.
I feel like the teen character of Chiron was my favorite character out of the three, or as far as an acting standpoint. Just kind of all of the influences that come in through with teenage kind of life, and seeing kind of the decline of his mother, and seeing kind of how he's treated like by other people, not even without them knowing about like his like sexual identity and stuff like that. Like I don't even think it was mentioned for part of it, but he was still kind of being picked on and bullied.
Yeah.
Just for being him. And like just the way that he carried that character through from the start of his story as Chiron all the way through to the end, you see a transition there, which you don't see in the other two parts. And I feel like it helps because you've got the first part, which is a solidified character. You've then got the second part, which is a transition from one character to another. And then the third part, which is another solidified character, when he finally is, what's the third character called? Black, right?
Black, yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like the way that that was kind of carried out and filmed through was just brilliant. Absolutely amazing from a filmmaker's standpoint. As far as other acting performances goes, I don't actually have the actors' names up here due to dodgy internet connection. But do you have the actress's name for the person who played the mother?
Oh, Naomie Harris. Yeah, she was in Pirates of the Caribbean.
Harris.
She played Tia Dalma. And she's up for Best Supporting Actress for this film. Without a question of a doubt, she's my favourite.
Why did I not put her down for Best Supporting Actress?
I know. Well, this was very difficult because when we do our predictions, we haven't necessarily seen all the movies up until that point, which is really awkward. But then again, we can't bring, personal preference into it. Maybe she will win, but without a question of a doubt, she is my favorite performance in this movie. She is terrifying. She's a character that you pity. She's a character that you empathize with. She really does cover all the bases in this movie. And if you're looking at the movie as well in terms of editing, because I know it's up for best editing too, a lot of her scenes are where the most creative editing of the film come into play as well. Yes, there's reversed shots. There's shots where there's dialogue happening, but her mouth isn't moving. It's from a previous shot. And it really does give you that uneasy sense of this character because she's not a stable character. She is a drug addict. I'm not sure if
completely unpredictable.
I think she's on a cocaine, isn't she? I'm not exactly sure which drug they say she's on, but this is really, I don't know if you can say this is the force that propels Chiron into the life that he eventually, gets involved in. But that lack of love, really. I don't know if you can say lack of love because she still does love her son, but she just has a very messed up way of showing it. The way that she's not connecting with her son or being there for him or helping him through these situations, I think that is definitely one of the prominent features that has that influence on Chiron and makes him initially that vulnerable character with nowhere to turn to. I mean, he goes to Mahershala Ali's house and he basically uses that as his home. That's the way where he feels safe and is being looked after, he's being nurtured, and he's just not getting that from Naomie Harris. But no, her performance is absolutely this is probably the best thing I've seen her in.
Yeah, and as far as we're talking about Mahershala Ali, I thought his performance was really well done. We liked him as Cottonmouth. We absolutely loved him as Cottonmouth.
He was the best thing in Luke Cage.
He was the best thing in Luke Cage. And, like, you can see that kind of his acting is bringing forward into this film. And, like, his character, every single time he was on the screen, you focused in. And that was something that I'm sure I've said about 4 times now for 4 different characters and actors. And I feel like that is just perfect for the screenplay and perfect for the directing. like the way it was directed and the way it was focused in on him and the way that the screenplay was brought forward. And it is nominated for adapted screenplay, is it not?
It is, yeah.
I think I got it down as either my number 1 or number 2 pick, but just as far as his character was concerned, his acting in the film, I can understand why he's the front runner for the best supporting actor completely.
See, on the flip side, I don't get me wrong, his performance is great in this film. It's a great performance, but I don't know whether I would call it Oscar worthy. I really wouldn't. His character's fine for what we see of him. He does bring that. I like that fathership role he brings. Like that, he is a guardian to Chiron, and you can see that. Yeah. And I don't know how in depth I can go into this without going into spoilers, but you can see, without being explicitly told, that ultimately how the movie ends, that is the life he was trying to shield and keep Chiron away from. Yeah. Maybe he's gone through it himself. Maybe he went through similar things as a kid himself. And it's like the vicious cycle. I mean, I like films like this where they try and prevent something, but it's ultimately, nature and nurture, all that stuff that comes to head. It's an inevitability in this situation, in this kind of environment.
Before we go on, very quickly into spoilers, recommendations. Chris, you usually do this, but you already know what my answer is, so
I do.
Over to you.
Recommendations. Moonlight, also known as Brokeback Mountain in the Hood. I would recommend it. As a drama, it's very good. As a film, it's very competently made with some great performances in there. However, if you are going into this film with that, kind of how I did with Manchester by the Sea as well, you are going in with this preconceived notion that this is, game changing. There's so much hype behind this movie. I think you're going to be a little bit let down by this movie. For example, when I compared it to Brokeback Mountain, I think Brokeback Mountain is a much more what word am I looking for? It's a much more involved movie. There's a lot more stuff going on. There's more to get attached to with the characters in a film like that. So I would recommend that more. This is still very good, though. It's definitely not one of my favorites this Oscar year. There's still many, many other Oscar films I need to watch this year. But I do think it is a tad overhyped. Not bad by any stretch of the imagination, but doesn't quite hit the levels that I was expecting it to going into this once I saw the hype. That's my recommendation. I guess I'd still recommend to check it out.
I thoroughly liked it, and this film I completely understand, and I'm happy that I've got it as my number 2 pick for the Best Picture in the Oscars. Pride tells me that self-pride being that I would have put it down as Best Picture if La La Land wasn't getting so much hype, because I can see this film. This film is an Oscar demographic film. It really is.
It is the kind of film that would get it. It may be one of the best
Oscar demographic films that have been made in recent times.
Mm-hmm. And
because of that, you're up against something which is completely out of left field, like something that only comes around once every 20, 30 years. Even The Artist, which was a black and white film, I'm pretty sure that in retrospect, we now look back and think that really should not have won the Oscar. But we're not going to do that with La La Land. We're going to think, I completely understand why that won the Oscar. And Moonlight is just one of those films which just so happens to be in a good year for Oscar picks, I guess. It's up against some tough competition, and it's a good film. I mean, it's happened to a lot of films in the past where they've been good films that have been released in film years, which have just phenomenal lists of films that have come out. Really enjoyed it. I highly recommend it as well. And I guess we now go into spoilers, which is going to be very brief because we're literally just going to talk about the plot very quickly.
Yeah, so as Tay just said, if you haven't seen this movie and you are still interested, go watch Moonlight, come back to us and watch the rest of our review now. I don't have a whole lot to say about this. So I did want to go back to Mahershala really quickly in this section. So we only see him in chapter 1. And then we don't see him for the rest of the film. I think there's a brief line, almost a throwaway line, which says, I haven't seen so-and-so since the funeral. Now, I think in that situation, we're meant to infer that is Mahershala Ali's character's funeral. We don't know actually what happened to him. The only thing that we can sort of assess from the situation is that he was a drug dealer. He was in this very violent neighborhood. clearly something went awry and he got killed in the process. That's what I took away from it. Maybe it isn't that, but I think that's what we're meant to take away from.
I feel like his character.
We
focus so much on Chiron's character, Little or Black's character, and yet the most tragic character in the entire story is Mahershala Ali's character. He's just a random person who, look, we're not meant to feel good for him at the start of the film. He's a drug dealer, but then again, he also takes in Little and kind of looks after him that one afternoon, feeds him and stuff like that. And then he sees the situation that he has at home. He almost takes over like a father figure role in his life. And then he realizes that he is the reason why his life is so...
Yeah, that's my favorite scene of the movie. That debate.
You've got that such tragic scene. My favorite scene in the movie is the shall we call it the Moonlight scene, where he takes him out swimming. Because that is the main scene from the trailer, and that is just my favorite scene. Mahershala Ali talking about like the title of the film and stuff like that, and that image of the water itself. There's a line of dialogue in the film which says like he just wants to go in there and cry and just sort of like melt into the water, and that image of the water of that beach crops up many times throughout the film. The use not only the water and the beach cropping up throughout the film, but the use of water in the film. In the next two incarnations, he splashed his face with water first to wash off the blood, and then splashed his face with water to clean himself.
Well, he completely submerges his head under the water, doesn't he? In the sink.
Yeah, the first time.
Yeah.
Every single time afterwards, he submerges his head in the water completely. And that all comes from this one scene where he dips his head into the water completely. It's all linked. It all is, and it's brilliant. And I feel like I wanted to see more of Mahershala Ali's character. I wanted to see him maybe pop up in the second act or the third act. But then again, I did say earlier, sometimes in a story, you can abandon those lines. That part of the life is gone. He has moved on to the next part. And he's a completely different person in the second part. He's a completely different person in the third part. But you can still see the connections. And I don't know how he'd fit in. Maybe he becomes more of a prominent role. Maybe he's changed. Maybe he hasn't. But yeah, it's difficult to choose on film's direction when it's done so well the first time round. So
one of my favorite moments as well with Chiron in his teen years is where the bully guy has got his lover at the time to basically punch him, and then they just kick him to shreds. And then he goes back to wash it. Is this fair? Yeah. And then something snaps in this character, and you can see that in the performance. It's such an intense moment of the film, and even as a viewer, you kind of sit back and you're prepping yourself on what happens.
Like, well, okay, he's going to do something. He's walking. He knows exactly where he's going.
He's got the swagger down, like down the corridor.
He's got this down. He is pissed. Okay, what's he going to do? And he walks into another room. He's like, oh, okay, it's not this room. It's not this room. And he walks through the cafeteria, and you're just like, oh, okay, is it? No, it isn't the cafeteria. He walked past it. Okay, here we go. Oh, he walks into another room. Oh, he walks into the classroom. Oh, okay, we see the character he's building. Okay, he's going to go over and like punch him or something. And he just picks up the chair and just slams it down. And you're like, whoa!
He wraps that chair around him like he's in a WWE match. Like, and he is floored on the floor. And I think he continues to beat him up with like the fragments of wood on the floor. It was a great moment. It was a great character moment.
It's not only that, but it's the teacher's reaction and the rest of the class. The class do nothing to start off with. They're in a state of shock for at least until he beats him for the third time, and they're just like, oh no, we've got to stop this.
And it's that tragic injustice that this bully's been getting away with stuff like that, probably even worse, and nothing happens. But when he does it, when it's the unassuming kid who's never done anything like that in his life, he's the one that gets persecuted the most for it. Then we flash forward to Black, and now he's a drug dealer himself. I don't think he's part of a gang at this point. I think he's pretty much just his own guy.
He said that he got a contact when he went inside, so he obviously went to jail for a little bit of time.
Yeah.
When he hit him over the head with a chair, I'm assuming for assault. And when he was in jail, he got given his kind of a job as a runner and stuff like that. So as soon as he got on the outside, he immediately had contacts. So. Yeah.
And what we initially see from this character as well, how you say... on the surface, and this was great how they did this, on the surface he is a completely different character. You wouldn't know it's the same person. A guy gets into the car with him, and it's this complete front that he puts on immediately. Like the guy is saying like, oh yeah, there's this hot chick down the street who I'm going to go over to bang, and he's like asking leading questions like, oh yeah, where's she at? I haven't seen her, all that. when he's away from all that and he is on his own, and we find out later in the film, which is probably one of the most emotional parts, where he speaks to his lover later on when he goes to the restaurant. His lover's moved on, he's got married, he's got kids now, and he says, "What about you?" And he's like, "You're the only person I've been with still." Like, he still loves him after all this time. He hasn't been with anyone else. When he does have those moments alone, or when he does what's the name of the character who's with her, Kevin, when he does have those moments with Karen, that's when he's absolutely at his real self. And if we jump to that end bit now, where he does go to the restaurant, there was, I don't know if you picked up on this as well, because I think even the camera zooms in on it. Earlier in the film, when he's talking to Mahershala Ali, they're at the dinner table, Mahershala Ali brings up this thing of how you have to sit at the head of the table so your eyes are permanently on the door. You've got command of the room. You know everything that's going on in that room. When they're in that restaurant at the end, I kept trying to place where the door was. I thought someone was going to come in and like shoot or kill Chiron. I was expecting it all through that. And there was like this really uneasy tension all the way through. Not just the romantic tension between the two characters, but just there was this air of danger that something was going to happen or something wasn't quite right. Maybe Kevin had plotted for someone to come in and take out Chiron. I'm not sure. And I think like when he leaves the table and he goes to play that song on the jukebox, the camera itself zooms in on the door on its own. And I was expecting something to happen. Didn't quite happen. So I don't quite understand the reasoning behind the misdirection in that scene. I don't know if you picked up on that at all when you were watching it.
Tension misdirection, maybe. I feel like it's just feeling the room, like feeling the atmosphere. Because when it did zoom in on the door, I'm pretty sure it also zoomed in on the reverse of the close sign, showing that the store was actually still open. So it also showed the fact that even though he was doing this meal for him, he still had other customers, and he was focusing on Chiron only at that point. No one else. Even though Chiron was off doing his own thing, looking at the jukebox, the focus of the camera kept on flicking back to the kitchen, and it was still focused on him. So it showed that he still cared after all this time.
And there was one moment when he does play that song on the jukebox and he initially hits play. Half of me was expecting "You Never Close Your Eyes" to start playing from Top Gun, like "You've Lost That Loving Feeling." That would have been incredible. I want to do a fan edit of that scene and replace the song they have in the film. I think that would just make my day. Yeah.
Not fit the tone. But yeah.
So should we get to the very end then?
The final thing I want to talk about. The final thing before we get to the very end, I want to talk about is cinematography. Yeah. Because the cinematography for this film, I believe it was nominated, but like,
I'll have a look.
I don't think it was given as much credit. I put forward Arrival and La La Land respectively for cinematography. So, like, it was just really, really well done for Miami. Thinking La La Land. And not only have you got kind of the neighborhoods they're in, you've got the cinematography of the school area, you've got the even the first, like, what's it called? First, like, cinematographical shot is walking in a circle, following the character around, and you seeing the background spinning around and seeing where they're at.
It's all one shot.
I like that.
Yeah.
It is all one shot. And there's two instances in this film where it's very similar, kind of mirroring it. You've got, in fact, three. The one where he's driving in the car in the final part, where the camera is attached to the door of the car. The one where he is about to get beaten up in his teenage years, and that first shot, which is constant all the way around. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of the this camera work in this film is from that handheld perspective with like a slight shake to it. And usually I'd be against that, but for a film like this, it really does kind of ground you and put you into that environment. Yeah. Just looking at the list here, the complete list of the awards that this is up for at the Academy Awards is Best Picture, Best Director, Supporting Actor, Supporting Actress, Adapted Screenplay, Original Score, Cinematography, and Film Editing. So as I said, quite a lot. Should we talk about the very end of this film then? Because I was kind of expecting more from it. It kind of just cuts off, and maybe this is sort of what I said with Manchester by the Sea's ending as well, without giving anything away for that. But it ends fairly abruptly, without any kind of knowledge or foresight as to what's going to happen with the future of these characters. Maybe you can infer some things from Mahershala Ali's character, and if history does in fact repeat itself, you know that Chiron probably, has like another 10 years, maybe, if that, because something's going to go wrong in his line of work. These two probably won't ever be together. As we know, Kevin has a family and his duties lie there now. I think they would probably share this one moment together, and that would be it.
I want to go ahead and say that this is the last. I want to go ahead and say this is the last time they ever see each other.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And
like
I mean,
they
they're completely
won't meet
different
again.
people as well. They're two different
They're living
people.
in completely different cities as well. Like I don't see these characters meeting up after the film ever again.
Yeah.
I think this is more of a kind of an act of almost desperation out of Chiron. He sees it as a possible opportunity to reignite something, and as soon as he realizes it's gone awry, he just wants to live in the moment and then let it be, you know?
Definitely. And I mean, the film kind of cuts off there, and it bookends the film with that shot of little Chiron at the waterfront, turns to the camera. It's a very nice shot to end on. I think that completely sums up the entire film, basically, how he is still that vulnerable character. He does just wish he could be adrift in the water, completely at peace, but sadly he probably isn't going to get that. He thinks of that in that moment when he is with Kevin, and that's going to be a very fleeting moment that's probably never going to crop up again. Just looking at comments as well, we've had a comment from Samuel Jericho, who says, hey, loved Hell or High Water. I want Hell or High Water to win Best Screenplay. Did you guys see I, Daniel Blake? It got snubbed. I didn't see that movie. I've heard of it.
No,
I didn't watch that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all the comments we've had. So I've said everything on Moonlight pretty much. If you've said everything,
I've said everything as well.
Awesome. So that'll do it for our review on Moonlight. Be sure to comment, subscribe, let us know what you thought of this movie. Did you like it as much as we did, or were you kind of ambivalent towards it, or did you have a lot of problems with it? Whatever you like, please do drop us a comment. As we are getting closer to award season and you can watch our Academy Awards predictions video, we want you to send in your complete list of Academy Awards predictions, because for the winner of that, once it comes to the night and we add all the totals up, whoever wins, we will give the chance to feature on one of our future Battle of the Brackets episodes. So it's definitely worth trying. We have a lot of fun on the Battle of Brackets. We don't know what that video is going to be, what we're going to be talking about, but we'll let you know at the time. But it will be a lot of fun, and we want to get you the fan engagement in it as well. So please do send us in your list for that. You can send it into our Facebook or Twitter, whatever you like. Links are all in the description or on this video. We'll find it, basically. We also have our Gmail. So there's still a lot of stuff to come on the channel, a lot more movie reviews, a whole lot. I am backdated on about 4 movies right now. Later tonight I'm going on a review for Trainspotting 2, so look out for that, and there'll be more trailer reactions for me as and when they crop up. Probably at the Super Bowl there's going to be a lot, so please hit that subscribe button. It is the best way to keep up to date with all of our content, and until the next video, we'll see you guys. Hold the brakes. Tate, go for it.
Later on tonight, I believe we have another issue of the Ones with the Force Star Wars podcast.
Yes, we do, and that, as I'm sure George is going to talk much more about it on that show, they are now on iTunes as well. They have a working podcast going for that to go alongside the YouTube show. Tune in for that. There'll be more information. They go through all the latest Star Wars news. There's been a whole lot, so tune into that. It's a great show, and yeah, that'll do it from us. So until the next video, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.